Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Yo.
It is Season 5, Episode 12. We're talking safeties today. Austin, the draft is just a couple of days away, and we got a little bit more work to do before we're ready, but we're almost there. How are you feeling?
Good. How about you?
Not too bad at all. As we get closer and closer, I'm starting to get a little more excited about the potential of who could be the newest Pittsburgh Steeler, but it's going to, of course, it's going to be a waiting game for us because there's no first-round pick for the Steelers. This has been, honestly, kind of a strange year, obviously, as far as the pre-draft process goes. I got to be honest, a lot of the players I looked at this year I just wasn't overall impressed with because the Steelers only have one pick in the first 100 selections. So I kind of just took to looking at lower-ranked prospects, and it's pretty depressing.
Honestly, I think this year I had a lot more players that I did like. I mean, I got really lucky with the wide receivers and defensive linemen I looked at, which I liked a lot, almost all of them. So for me, this year, I got a lot of decent players.
Perhaps I should have rephrased. I guess it depends on the position, per se. But yeah, I think I probably didn't look at enough higher caliber players because I was looking at a lot of day 2 and day 3 guys. Not that I didn't enjoy it. I guess depressing was probably too strong of a word, but when you go from what I was used to the past couple of years when the Steelers were picking like in the low teens, early 20s to picking at 49, I kind of changed where I put the goalposts, so I was looking at different caliber players. I tell you what, there's no TJ Hawkinson in this draft for me, but there are certainly still some players that I like, but again, there are some players that I didn't like, and I got to be honest, when talking about the safety position, I came across 4 lower caliber players, a couple interesting, not ones that I loved. This class as a whole, though, I get the feeling that it's not super deep.
Yeah, I looked mostly for safeties at higher caliber, actually. I went on the opposite side of the scale, but yeah, there was quite a quick drop-off I found, I think, with my players.
And the safety position is going to be one that's relatively important for the Steelers, but, you think about they currently have their starters in place with Minkah Fitzpatrick, who is, I guess, in a manner of speaking, their first-round pick from this season, and Terrell Edmunds, their actual first-round pick from a couple seasons ago. And beyond that, they don't really have any safety depth. They have a couple of special teams guys in Marcus Allen and Jordan Dangerfield, but not a whole lot else going on besides that. So there's definitely a need for depth right here because an injury to one of those two guys and all of a sudden you're in trouble.
Oh, yeah, 100%. You don't want to see Marcus Allen or Jordan Dangerfield out there in particular. I mean, there's room to improve here. And then there's always, you might be already thinking about replacing Edmonds because, almost everything on the Steelers is they have a guy for every position right now. They're not perfect, but you can live with this roster as it is. Now, once you start thinking about what needs to be added, you think probably nose tackle first because that's the only position that you don't have a starter for. And then probably this next 2 things you're thinking of are safety and offensive guard because you don't know how long Wisniewski is going to last, and Terrell Edmunds is considered the weak point on a very good defense. So you might be thinking about drafting a safety that could be replacing Edmunds in the future. So that's how I look at it.
And I think it's difficult because I have a feeling the Steelers, at least not with their first pick, are probably not going to want to invest in a safety because they've spent their last 2 drafts, or theoretically, 2 of their last 3 first-round picks, if you include the one that they traded this past year, on safeties. I have a feeling, right or wrong, that they might not be as willing to spend another early pick on one, even though you look at that room and there's only 2 capable starters.
Yeah, they definitely have to find the value. If the safety isn't the best player available at 49, they shouldn't reach for it because it is not the most important position that they have going into this draft. But, we'll have to see.
Would you agree with me that defense has the better overall players at the top, but offense probably has more depth?
Yes? Question mark? I'm trying to think. Maybe I feel like it's about the same now. I feel like offense, like the backups aren't like the same anymore. Like the offensive line last year had BJ Finney to come in if it was necessary and stuff, and he's not there anymore. And
just because on defense you have all your starters except for nose tackle, and on offense there are questions about your starting running back, who your number one receiver is, whether that's going to be Smith-Schuster or Deontay Johnson. A question about your top tight end. I mean, you have two number ones now, so to speak, but it's deeper per se. You don't really have any questions about adding a ton of different guys besides maybe one more offensive lineman. And on defense, you're just missing the nose tackle, but there's questions at inside linebacker, nose tackle, and safety. So I'm just thinking that maybe you could. What I'm trying to get at is I think that you're going to see maybe that first pick on offense, and then you're going to see probably the majority on defense. That would be my guess.
It makes sense.
So as far as the safety position goes, we have 8 or 9. Do we have 8 or 9? I think we have 8 players today.
9. I'm fairly confident I looked at 5, and I left off last episode, if any of you guys listened to that, saying I will rank Ashton Davis today, even though I already talked about him. I just hadn't done the safeties. So with that considered, yeah, I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 plus Ashton Davis to rank, so 6 in total to talk about.
Okay, then. Well, actually, you want to just tell me a little bit about Ashton Davis quickly then, since I didn't get a chance to listen to what you had to say about him?
Sure. So Ashton Davis was mostly a speed product. He's a track star and a football star. He was a walk-on at Cal, which was pretty impressive, and he was able to be a dual sport athlete and come on rather quickly. He actually, because of his speed from track, he was ridiculous. He didn't get to run in the combine due to an injury, but he said that if he got to do his pro day, which I don't know if he did a virtual one, I probably should have looked it up, that he would have run a sub 4.4 time, and his tape reflects that. He is a very fast prospect, but with that being said, his instincts aren't there. He's a little bit raw. Because he was a walk-on at Cal. He wasn't really in that position. He started actually at Cal as a cornerback. He played 3 games as a cornerback at the end of the year in his first season, and then he switched to safety and then got 2 years of safety. So he's a little bit raw, and his tackling needs a little bit of help. Actually, a lot of bit of help. He kind of just lunges forward and tries to smack people to get them down because he's not very strong. If I remember correctly, he had 15 reps on the bench press. He was definitely tied for 4th worst. So that's kind of the overview of him. Okay,
good to know. And as far as the 4 safeties you had here today, you want to tell me a little bit about them? You said, or just at least tell me their names and where they went to school, because you said that they were kind of the higher tier guys.
Sure. So I looked at mostly higher tier guys, but there's one that's not. I looked at Grant Delpit from LSU. I looked at Antoine Winfield from Minnesota. I looked at Brandon Jones from Texas. I looked at Jeremy Chin from Southern Illinois, and then I looked at Cameron Curl from Arkansas. Who were the prospects that you looked at?
I took a look at Josh Metellus from Michigan, L'Jarius Sneed from Louisiana Tech, Chris Miller from Baylor, and Rodney Clemens from SMU. So since you have 5 players, why don't you go ahead and start, and which guy are you going to start with?
I'll start with Delpit.
Okay.
He is 6'2" and 213 pounds. He grew up a Saints fan, holding season tickets for them even after having to move to Texas after Hurricane Katrina. He came out of high school in Houston as a 4-star recruit and returned home to Louisiana to attend LSU. As a true freshman, he was able to start 10 of 13 games, amassing 60 tackles, 3.5 for loss, 1 interception, and 2 pass breakups. Surprisingly, not enough to get him any freshman honors, but still pretty good. In 2018, everyone knew his name. He was the 9th player in LSU history to be a unanimous first-team All-American and obviously first-team All-SEC pick for his 74 tackles, 9.5 for a loss, 5 sacks, an SEC leading 5 interceptions, and also 9 pass breakups. in 2019, he won the Jim Thorpe Award, given to the best defensive back in the country, as well as being recognized as a second-team Associated Press All-American and first-team All-Conference pick for his 65 tackles, 4.5 for a loss, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 7 pass breakups through his 14 starts. Obviously, he was also a national champion too, and with the championship win and being named the best defensive back in the nation, there was obviously nothing left to do besides declare for the draft. So he forewent his senior season and declared for the draft. So what's good about him, and I usually list it first, so Delpit played through a high ankle sprain in 2019, which even led him to stay out of the combine, so it had to be a pretty bad one to nag him for that long. And his coverage in 2019 was still adequate in my eyes. The tape I saw, specifically in the Alabama game and Florida game, which were the ones that I hyper-focus on, because after I know Alabama's wide receivers. By now I know Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, and Devontae Smith. And then with Florida, John looked at Van Jefferson, and I looked at Freddie Swain, and I had a good feeling on Grimes, so I knew the wide receivers that he was playing against. So I saw a lot of good coverage on the wide receivers, and this was supposedly a bad year for him, or a step back from 2018. But I do think that an ankle sprain probably played a role in that. So 2019 was a step back. I would have loved to see what he would have done without the high ankle sprain. What I liked about his coverage was that he was able to make solid reads and breaks from high zones while showing decent patience in coverage. Then he has the size and length to be able to challenge and win contested catches, while wide receivers respect him in the middle of the field, as he can be pretty physical with his hitting, and it probably caused a few drops in the middle of the field. Like, for example, the game against Florida, he was able to knock out what would have been a touchdown from the tight end Pitt's hands from just a heavy hit. Speaking of that physicality, when he made that hit, he literally threw his whole body at Pitts, and he showed that he's going to be willing to sell out his body to make a stop and is going to get involved in the run game. He doesn't shy away from any tackler or challenge, so he can also be physical with tight ends when pressing. Last two things, that he could rush into the backfield and set the edge when needed, and could run the alley on jet sweeps, stretch plays, and wide receiver screens. So what's not good about him, and what I found to be the most disappointing when watching his tape, was his tackling, especially against the run. But there were missed tackles everywhere, and struggles against certain running backs, like Najee Harris of Alabama, for example. Delpit had a real tough time in that Alabama game trying to get him down. There was quite a few times that he had to get matched up with him, and he typically lost, as he first off doesn't have the frame for to be able to handle bigger running backs like that have 20 pounds on him. And then he also fails to come to balance to be able to lay bigger hits and doesn't wrap tackles often. He usually ends up trying to strike it, ends up falling on his face and missing. Continuing with problems against the run, his angles were not good, and there were times where his transition from coverage to defending the run weren't very good. Like in the game against Auburn, where he was the single high safety way back in the field and had plenty of time to see Auburn's running back down the middle, but allowed him to get all the way to within LSU's 10. I will give credit for the effort to stop the touchdown there, but the point still stands that the game should have never have been that big in the first place, as if his recognition should have been faster and his angle should have been better. Part of the reason his pursuit angles aren't that good are because he plays with tight hips that limit how he can adjust while in pursuit. And with these things considered, and then taking into account his lateral transitions from off man, and that his transitions from off man are a little slow, as well from his lack of hip fluidity. I'm sorry, I can't speak. And it makes his range as a high safety only average. It should kind of be inferred, since I talked about him struggling against big running backs, but tight ends with the ball in space are going to give him even more struggles. And I found his coverage against tight ends to be a little disappointing. Games against Auburn and Alabama were fine, but in the game against Florida, he really struggled against Kyle Pitts. I did say he did break up a pass against him, but that was one win in the entire game, and it took him throwing his entire body at Pitts to stop it. Last thing is he performs wrong shoulder take-ons, and it causes him to lose gap integrity. So overall, I don't really see why people said his coverage wasn't very good in 2019. And if that really was bad comparatively, hey, I'll take it, and would love to see him improve upon it when he's fully healthy. While I don't think the angles he takes will get better, his speed definitely will, which can maybe make up for the bad angles he takes. He offers first-round coverage in my book. Where I was left wanting more is his tackling. It reminds me a lot of Mike Mitchell, where he's going to try and lay a hard hit at times and is often going to miss. But I would say Delpit's actually a little worse. His Delpit is slightly smaller weight-wise than Mitchell was. But anyhow, his tackling is like a fifth-round value, and something that even his coaches said is he wasn't the leader Jamal Adams was with LSU. So with all this considered, I would have him with a mid to late round 2 grade. I like his coverage skills, but I do worry about him a lot as a tackler. So my sources were from Alabama in 2019 versus Auburn in 2019 and versus Florida in 2019. Which prospect would you like to talk about first?
I'm going to start with Josh Metellus from Michigan, a senior, standing at 5'11" and 209 pounds. He was a former Class 8A, literally 8A, All-Florida player in high school. One of his coaches in high school was actually Devin Bush Sr., so there's an interesting little connection with the Steelers. Obviously, he played with Devin Bush at Michigan, too. So, just something to make note of. He was an honorable mention All-Big Ten player in 2017, despite only starting in 3 games. But he was an essential part of the defense. He had 50 tackles. Then he became a second-team All-Big Ten player as a rover linebacker hybrid in 2018 by breaking up 6 passes and picking off 3 passes. And then he was an honorable mention All-Big Ten selection this past year with 74 tackles, a career high, and 13 starts. So the positives, the strengths of Josh Metellus' game is that he is a willing and able player in run support. He was a primary starter the last 2 seasons of his college career. And as I mentioned with the run support, he displays good tackling technique. He had a high tackling percentage in his college career, so he didn't miss a lot of tackles either. He's got pretty good arm length and big hands, over 10 inches long. And he's got a very good vertical. He tested well in the vertical with a 36.5-inch vertical. And he's not afraid of physicality either. He's willing to stick his face in the fan, if you will. He's able to get his head around in coverage and does a good job of contesting passes, so that's kind of interesting. You see a huge issue with a lot of cornerbacks at the highest level of the game. They struggle to turn around and look for the ball. That's not necessarily an issue for him, so that's good to see. He's also not fooled by play action very often, and he's good in short zone coverage, so he can play in shorter hook zones as a strong or box safety. And he's also experienced in man-to-man coverage because Michigan played a lot of it when he was in school. And he offers special teams potential. Really all the guys I looked at today are guys that have special teams potential. The weaknesses in Metellus' game, though, is that he's not really a good athlete. He's got those tight hips that you really don't like to see in a defensive back. He's lacking in agility and acceleration, and he's not a sideline-to-sideline guy. I saw on his tape several times that he had trouble mirroring guys' movements like running backs in the open field. They would always beat him to the outside, or they'd change direction and outrun him to a certain spot on the field. That was not good to see. Also, his physical nature might not work as well in the NFL because, again, the blockers are bigger at the NFL level, and he'll struggle to stay in the game and be as effective if he's playing so physically when he is a safety. He also struggled to diagnose routes last season. He was involved in far too many coverage breakdowns, and he was guilty of big plays against due to late reactions. Also takes terrible angles in space. Like I said, he got beaten to the edge when he was in good position to make a tackle several times on tape. Also, he probably won't have a ton of interceptions in the NFL. He did have, 5 interceptions in college. So that is a decent amount, but he's not a guy that projects to have a ton once he gets to the NFL. All in all, with Josh Metellus, he's a guy that has a good background, good experience, and enough tools in the toolbox to make an NFL roster, but his athletic limitations and lack of overall experience in zone coverage and play recognition will make it difficult to see him as a starting safety at the NFL level. If he does have to play significant snaps, I expect it'll have to be as a box safety primarily that aids as a run defender. He profiles as a good special teams player who can fill out the back end of a roster, and in time could be a good rover safety in a reserve role, but probably not right away. I've seen him projected as a 5th-round pick, and I think that that's a good grade for him. Given the uncertainty of this class, I think safer picks could go a little earlier, so I think 5th round, maybe even late 4th-round pick is where you could see him going. I certainly don't think that that's too rich when you consider the fact that you're not going to be able to meet with a ton of these guys. You'll prefer to take a player like that over a guy with injury concerns this year over any other year. I looked at his games against Ohio State in 2018, which was good Lord, that was a horrible game for Michigan. I remember watching that game last year for Devin Bush, too. And then I also watched the 2020 Citrus Bowl against Alabama this year. So that was Josh Metellus from Michigan. Austin, you want to talk to us about Antoine Winfield? That has to be the son of the former NFL cornerback, right?
That is correct.
I'll
get right into it. There's the pretty big NFL connection, if you can tell from his name. But he is the son of former Jim Thorpe Award winner and 3-time Pro Bowl, 1-time second-team All-Pro corner, Antoine Winfield Sr., who played for the Bills and Vikings, I believe most recently in 2009. He didn't retire too long ago. I mean, I say that, it's 11 years ago now, but regardless, and just because I forgot to say it, Winfield is 5'9" and 203 pounds. He started 9 games and got 52 tackles, 2.5 for loss, 4 pass breakups, and a pick 6. In his first season. Unfortunately, his next 2 seasons were riddled by injury, where in both 2017 and 2018, he was only able to start the first 4 games and then missed the rest of the seasons with a hamstring and foot injury, respectively. Still, in 2017, he was able to get 20 tackles, a sack, 2 pass breakups, and a blocked kick. And in 2018, he was able to get 17 tackles and an interception. Something about Maryland was cursed, as he suffered both his injuries against them, which is unideal for the Steelers when you have to play Baltimore twice a year. Luckily for his 2019 season, he was able to stay healthy and start all 13 games, including the one against Maryland, and he was great in that game. He was recognized as a first-team Associated Press All-American and first-team All-Big Ten selection for his 88 tackles, 3.5 for loss, 3 sacks, 7 interceptions, including a pick 6, 1 pass breakup, and 2 forced fumbles, probably being cheated out of the Jim Thorpe Award for not being a national champion like Grant Delpit, because he had the better stats. Technically, Winfield is declaring as a redshirt sophomore, so he could have played for 2 more seasons, but I think he made the right choice to forego the rest of his college career to declare for the draft. So, let's start with his positives. After seeing his tape, the first thing I think of when I think about him is missile. How fast and precise he is. He tied for the 3rd fastest combine 40 time, and it really comes up on tape. Not only that, but he takes some really good pursuit angles. I watched him come from one sideline to the other to make plays. It's actually pretty incredible stuff. It helps that he has above-average play recognition, as well as being able to recognize the play design and put himself in good positioning. Then taking cues from the quarterback to decide what to do, and then anticipates pattern breaks in space. Really, it's best to describe him as instinctive. Ball tracking comes naturally for him, so it feels like he's always in position. Then what surprised me was his play strength. I wasn't expecting much, so he far exceeded my expectations with how he's able to strike with intensity and focus. With his above-average strength and compact frame, he's really able to lay the boom. He does it smartly, too, coming to balance to see what he's hitting as a tackler so he doesn't miss tackles as much. Last couple things are that he's been a tape jockey from a young age, studying with his Pro Bowl quarterback father, and he's always looking to create turnovers, looking to punch out the ball, and he turns to locate the ball with his back to the quarterback. So what's not good about him, and addressing the elephant in the room, or perhaps I should say the mouse in the room, is that Winfield Jr. looks tiny out there, and at the NFL level, he's going to be one of the smallest safeties once he gets drafted, with below-average height and length. And this makes it hard for him on jump balls downfield. Not only that, though, the lack of length makes it harder for him to wrap tackle, and it shows up on tape. He really has to put in the work to get the positioning and footwork almost perfectly for him to be able to wrap up an opponent. Then there's the same problem that I had with TCU defensive tackle Ross Blacklock, where he only has 1 good season behind him and a solid freshman season. But Winfield missed a lot of time and game experience between 2017 and 2018, which can be cause for concern. Then for a guy as fast as he is, I found him to not have the fastest burst to be able to drive on throws and get to the ball, and also show he can be slower to recover when he takes the bait on trickery. It also doesn't help that he's another guy that plays with hip tightness, limiting how fluid his transitions can be. And the last thing is that his range over the top is a bit limited. So overall, the size is a concern at the NFL level, but in college he made it work. In the game against Penn State, he was somehow able to secure leverage over a 6'4" receiver and make an interception in that game, and that left me impressed. As I was watching, he reminded me a lot of T.J. Ward, and it turns out that's who Lance Zierlein compared him to, too. If he could replicate Ward's career, especially with Denver, that would be a great career. Similar to how I felt about Blacklock, if Winfield hadn't missed so much of his 2018 campaign and had played at the same level he did in 2019, which it looked like he would have, I would likely be talking about Winfield as a first-round pick. But I think due to his size combined with that, he is likely to end up in the second round, likely early second round at that. But I don't view him as a first-rounder right now. I don't see any possibility of him falling into the third. I think he's a little too good for that. So I watched his game versus Penn State in 2019, versus Iowa in 2019, and versus Nebraska in 2019. What prospect would you like to talk about next?
So are you ready for this? The last time Antoine Winfield Sr. played in the NFL, just guess when it was.
I thought it was 2009, but
Nope.
when was it?
Nope, it was the preseason of the 2013 season with the Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, man, that's only 7 years ago, bro. It's not that far away.
He's 42 years old. He could still theoretically be playing today.
True. Tyvon Branch just retired recently.
Yeah, his last year, full year, because he got cut with the last cut down with the Seahawks in the 2013 preseason. But his last full season was 2012, which he played a full season that year. And he had 3 interceptions that year, which was tied for the second most that he ever had in a season. So isn't that something?
That's wild, dude. It's not been that long at all, man.
No, it definitely hasn't. And he was also 5'9", so the whole size thing, maybe that's not too much of an issue. Of course, his father was just a cornerback, not a safety, too.
Yeah.
Anyhow, excuse me. That being said, second player I'm taking a look at is L'Jarius Sneed from Louisiana Tech. Steelers once got a really good player from Louisiana Tech named Terry Bradshaw, so that's always an interesting connection there. But in any case, Sneed had the best 40-yard dash of any cornerback at the Combine at 4.37 seconds, so that was pretty impressive. And he had the second best vertical jump at 41 inches. So he was a cornerback for most of his time in college, but played safety his last season there. His first career interception was a pick six as a freshman in the Conference USA Championship game. And he had a couple productive years as a primary starter in 2017 and 2018 with 4 interceptions in those 2 years, and then finished with 3 as he moved to safety last year and was an All-Conference USA selection with 6 pass breakups as well. The strengths of his game, the obvious, the blazing long speed, best in the cornerback class for the 40-yard dash. He obviously can play both cornerback and safety, so position versatility is nice to see. He has experience as a press man corner. You don't see a ton of press man in college as opposed to the NFL, so that's good to see. He can jam pretty well at the line of scrimmage. He made a ton of plays on the ball and had good ball skills in college, so he had, how many? He had 20 pass breakups throughout his college career and 7 interceptions, so that's pretty good. He also had 4 pick sixes in high school, and 3 of them were in college too, so he knows how to take the ball to the end zone once he gets it in his hands. He's willing in run support, and he's good at shedding the blocks of wide receivers. The weaknesses of his game, though, just like pretty much everyone else I looked at, they have tight hips, change of direction is painfully slow, thus negating the positives of his good jam and press coverage. He also doesn't do a good job of closing off passing windows when the ball is incoming, and he's overly aggressive as a tackler, so he'll over-pursue his angles. And his transition to safety looked good on the stat sheet, but he looked lost at times on tape. And he was really clutchy and grabby, especially as a safety, but he was, in general, a clutchy and grabby kind of guy. Got called for penalties. That's always an issue in the NFL. You think immediately about Artie Burns when you think of that. And even though he was a willing run defender, it wasn't nearly as good when he was a safety. Even though he was more involved, he wasn't necessarily in better shape to be doing that. So overall, L'Jarius Sneed's tape, sadly, some of it was removed from YouTube during this process, so I didn't get to see nearly as much as I was hoping. But from everything I did see, Sneed seems to fit in better as a cornerback to me than he does as safety. I saw both some tape as a corner and some as a safety. He just feels more natural as a corner to me. Maybe I didn't see the right selection of games, but he just looked better overall as a cornerback. So that being said, teams that are considering Sneed need to think about where they want him to play. He still has some kinks to work out in his game, like his clutchy hands and not sticking to receivers when they come out of their breaks, but his excellent speed should give him some looks in the middle of day 3 of the draft. I think that's a fair time to take a look at someone like him who has some tools to work with, but some issues to work out as well. It all depends on where the team drafting him sees him fitting in. I looked at his game against Marshall in 2019, the NFLPA Bowl of 2020, and several of his YouTube highlights. So that being said, you have 3 players left. You want to talk to us about Brandon Jones, please?
Yes, he's from Texas. He's 5'11" and 198 pounds. He doesn't have an NFL connection that I know of, but his father, Burt Jones, played football at Stephen F. Austin University.
Wait.
Top 50.
I have a question. Burt Jones, did he play quarterback?
I don't know. It didn't specify anything. It just said he played at Stephen F. University, and that was it.
Oh, okay. All right, I just wanted to double check because there was a Burt Jones who played for the Baltimore Colts in the 70s and 80s, but he went to LSU, so I don't think that's him.
Yeah, I don't think so. Just like it's like a coincidence. But anyhow, Brandon Jones was a top 50 prospect coming out of high school and decided to stay home to play for the University of Texas. As a true freshman, he was able to start 1 of 12 games and got 16 tackles, a safety, and 2 blocked kicks. As a sophomore, he was able to start all 12 games, amassing 61 tackles, 4 for a loss, and 2 pass breakups. In 2018, he was an honorable mention All Big 12 pick for 70 tackles, 5.5 for a loss, and 2 interceptions through 10 starts, only because he missed some time with the head and ankle injuries. He went to the NFL Draft Advisory Committee before deciding if he should come out early or not, and ultimately decided to return for his senior season in 2019, as he felt the team could be a championship contender. He was able to earn second-team All Big 12 notice for starting all 12 games and gaining 86 tackles, 4.5 for a loss, a sack, 2 interceptions, and 4 pass breakups. Unfortunately, a shoulder injury kept him from playing much in the team's bowl game, and then he opted to get surgery on the torn labrum following the season. With no more years of eligibility left, he declared for the draft. However, the surgery made it so he couldn't participate in the combine. So we don't have combine numbers from him. So Jones offers versatility coming out, playing all 3 safety positions while also having a few steps lined up as a slot corner at times. Then there's a toughness to his game. He's played through pain, and he plays bigger than he is, with an attacking demeanor and the desire to be in the action. He has the motor to match the desire to, being able to pursue his opponents from the complete other side of the field. It's not just his motor, though. He has the speed and ability to change up his pursuit angles to be able to help him out as well. The speed allows him to play over the top and also run with deep cover targets. And then lastly, combining the speed with his agility and reactive athleticism to be an open field tackler, he could be an early special teams contributor on kick and punt cover teams. On the flip side of things, Jones has a few problems that are similar to Winfield Jr., where he's another undersized guy. He's an inch taller than Winfield Jr., but he's another guy that needs to set up perfectly to make tackles, so he doesn't have the size to stop runs in their tracks. And he projects as someone that may have some issues against bigger competition on jump balls. It would have been nice to see his vertical. He could have possibly erased that problem, but I felt like his tape wasn't telling enough whether he could handle NFL size or not on those jump balls. Then I found his instincts to be unimpressive, showing he could be slow to read and react, especially when he was playing single high. It also doesn't show good route anticipation either. Again, the response time just isn't great, and he doesn't show good lateral bursts at break points. With all these things considered, it makes it hard to get to the catch point and makes plays on the ball, showing very few pass breakups over his career. Last thing is he's been shown he can be exploited in man coverage at times. So overall, I am glad Jones decided to come back for the 2019 season. I watched some of his 2018 tape, and it wasn't as good. I think it really raised his draft stock, him coming back. It's a shame he wasn't able to participate in the combine, though. I think he would have been a top performer. And if he performed really well in the vertical, it could have been the thing that got his draft stock up into the second round. But right now, I have him with a third round grade with him coming off an injury. His size and showing some concerning traits in man coverage, but he still flashed a lot of potential. And most of that game against LSU, he played like a first-round pick, so getting him in the third could be a steal. Others have him going even later than that in the fourth, which would be a fantastic value. And something I failed to mention is that this has been a guy that's been mocked to the Steelers a lot in the fourth round, so surprisingly, we have another guy that I actually do like that is being mocked to the Steelers, at least somewhat. So I watched his game versus LSU in 2019, versus OSU in 2019, versus USC in 2018, as well as his highlights. So that was Brendan Jones from Texas. Who's your next one?
I took a look at Chris Miller from Baylor, a 5'11" senior and only 190 pounds. Didn't really burst onto the scene until his junior season. He was an honorable mention All Big 12 member and then was second team All Big 12 his senior year. He had 67 and 76 tackles in those 2 years. The big thing I noticed when turning on his tape is that he is an aggressive and intense downhill defender. He attacks blocks and he attacks receiver screens and ball carriers with a vengeance. He loves hitting. He's a very physical player, and he really is one of those guys. He's kind of a throwback safety in that regard, where he's got kind of an intimidating presence on the back end. As you see with a lot of guys these days, kind of like, my favorite player from last year was Chauncey Gardner-Johnson at this position. He was a slot corner and a safety, a single high safety. He's one of those guys that actually does have relatively fluid hips, allows for good transition, better agility. He has good closing burst and short area quickness, and he improved his coverage skills from 2018 to 2019, and he's got good special teams potential. On the flip side, though, the things that I saw from his tape that I didn't like, he's pretty small. He's got a lanky frame lacking in muscle, and the way he plays in college is not going to work in the NFL because he's going to get absolutely destroyed by doing that. He's just not strong enough and not big enough. He's also pretty undisciplined. He got penalized a lot. He got penalized for targeting 3 different times within the first month and a half of last season. That's not good. Also, his pursuit angles are just straight garbage. I watched a game against Oklahoma last year where he just took a horrible angle and the running back just ran right around him and he went to the end zone. That's not good. His long speed is just average, and he struggles to process the play in front of him. And also, this is a huge red flag. He didn't have a single interception in college. No interceptions and only 6 passes defended. So he doesn't really have good ball skills either. In conclusion, Chris Miller is a bit of a loose cannon out there. He's so overly aggressive and intense that he can get himself into trouble out there. He over-pursues plays, takes poor angles, misses tackles, and gets called for way too many penalties. When you add that to the fact that he had practically no production as far as his ball skills are concerned, you do have some issues to work through. That being said, his demeanor is something that teams are going to like to see. If they can harness that and reel him in a bit, get him to add some more weight without losing speed, Miller could turn into a decent run support safety or nickel linebacker. Teams seem to be talking about, or scouts I should say, seem to be talking about him as a cornerback. I guess I just don't see that because of the way that he plays. Maybe he could be a good run support slot corner, but I just don't see that right now. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Devin Duvernay in terms of his positionless kind of issue, where he's got good talent in some respects, but not for the position he plays. Devin Duvernay, who I looked at from Texas earlier as a receiver, but he kind of reminds me of more of like a running back skill set on a wide receiver, where Chris Miller's skill set reminds me of that of a 2-down linebacker, but he plays safety and he probably should play cornerback. So I just don't really understand don't know where I'd put him if I were to draft him. So it's pretty interesting, but honestly, there's not enough here, in my opinion, to warrant more than a 7th-round pick here. I watched his games against Texas Tech last year and Oklahoma 2 years ago. So that was Chris Miller from Baylor. Feel free to talk to us about Jeremy Chin.
Yeah, from Southern Illinois. He's 6'3", 221 pounds. He was not highly recruited coming out of high school at all due to an injury in his junior season. However, he was an all-metro pick as a senior, allowing him to be picked up by Southern Illinois University. He was picked to the conference's all-newcomer team in 2016 for his 51 tackles, 3 picks, 2 pass breakups through 6 starts in 8 games. And this was despite missing the first 3 games of the year with a dislocated shoulder. As a sophomore, he was able to start all 11 games and earned himself second-team all-conference accolades for 66 tackles, 3 picks, 6 pass breakups, and tying for 4th in the FCS with 4 forced fumbles. He He was a first-team All-Missouri Valley Football Conference pick as a junior for 55 tackles, 3 interceptions, 7 pass breakups, and 2 forced fumbles. In 2019, he was able to elevate his game enough to not only earn first-team All-Conference again, but also earn second-team Associated Press All-American for 71 tackles, 2.5 for a loss, 4 interceptions, and 3 more pass breakups. With no more years of eligibility left, he's declared for the draft. And starting with what's good about him, size, length, good musculation, ridiculous speed. Chin is one of the best combinations of all of these things in the entire draft class. He's actually quite freaky, being able to run a 4.45 40 time at 6'3" and 221 pounds. It's alien-like. Winfield is 17 pounds lighter, and he tied him in the 40 time, and that's not taking away from Winfield. It's just that crazy that Chin can run that fast. Overall, Chin had a really good combine, though, also tying for second in the vertical and tying for fourth in the bench press, showing that despite his level of competition, he has NFL strength. He used that strength in college to stack and shed blockers with ease, and you combine it with his length, and he has shown to be able to body up and wrap opponents when tackling, which has been mostly a struggle for my other safety prospects. Now, combining his speed with his footwork, that is, it's comparable to that of a big cornerback, and he has shown that some great closing burst and recovery speed when he does get beat. And he plays with hustle, too, trying to get back into plays. Last couple of things are that he's been excellent at the catch point in college, using his length to gain leverage and taking the ball away whenever he can, showing excellent production throughout his college career. So, on the other side of things, my biggest problem with Chin was his awareness and play recognition. He's just not good at finding the ball at all, being a direct responsibility for one of North Dakota State University's rushing touchdowns in 2019, as he had no idea where the ball carrier was and let him run past him. At the end of the day, his football IQ is not there, and he has instead relied heavily on his athleticism through college, which worked. However, you look at the level of competition, you have to wonder, would he have been able to be as good if he were to play one of the Power 5 conference teams? It's debatable. But usually relying on pure athleticism never works. Going to depth on the play recognition and instinct issues, he can be baited by routes pulling him off of his deep coverage duties. He is slow to read the hints given to him by the opponent and therefore slow to flow to the football from the box. He struggled processing and playing through combo routes, and his eye balance needs to get better. Then there's the fact that he has such narrow vision when in coverage, losing the play development around him because, again, bad instincts. Last thing is he's shown to be a head ducker as a chop-down tackler, and that will need to be eliminated once he gets to the next level. Lance Zerlin compared him to Harrison Smith, and to me that is a terrible comparison. Like, one of the worst I've ever seen from him, as they are nothing alike to me. But I don't have a direct comparison. My best comparison is to Terrell Edmonds, as they came out as athletic freaks with similar arm lengths, 40 times birds, and weights. Also, with that being said, Chin is an extremely raw athlete, like Edmonds was, or I consider Edmonds to be. But I would say even more raw, and Edmonds played at a higher level of competition than Chin did at Virginia Tech. Chin, however, is a better athlete than Edmonds was, being taller, heavier, likely stronger, faster, and could jump higher and farther than Edmonds could. Only really being beat out slightly by Edmonds in arm length and hand size, so take that as you will. Still, Chin needs to sit down and watch a lot of tape. You could really, you can't really teach instincts, but you can teach play recognition. His is just below average for where he's at right now, so it seems like it would be quite a challenge for him to get understanding better. For that, I give him a 4th round grade to early 5th round. I think he's going to go earlier than that, as he's an athletic freak. Probably in the early 3rd round if they could develop him. If they could develop him, he would be a steal with his assets. But it just seems very hard with the NFL likely to be way more complicated than SIU. For those who forgot, by the way, I gave Edmonds a late 3rd round to early 4th round grade when everyone mostly viewed him as a 2nd rounder because of his athletic abilities. So don't be surprised if Chin jumps into the 2nd round as the team tries to take a risk. But I don't think he'll make the jump in draft stock Edmonds did, though. 2nd is the earliest he's going. If he goes in the 1st round, then whatever team does that is making a huge mistake. But I watched his games versus North Dakota State University in 2019, versus Youngstown State in 2019, and versus Youngstown State in 2018 as well. So, who is the next prospect you would like to talk about?
I'm wrapping up with Rodney Clemens, the redshirt senior from SMU at 6 foot tall and 209 pounds. He was one of those guys that was an all-state football player in high school, and then his transition to college game, he had a season-ending injury his freshman year that granted him a redshirt year, and then he was a consistent starter for the following 4 seasons. He was named a team captain his last year on campus and was a second-team All-AAC selection with 78 tackles and led his team with 4 interceptions and 9 pass breakups. The strengths of Rodney Clemens' game is that he was a 4-year starter and a team captain as a senior. He played both safety positions. He was a nickel linebacker and slot cornerback, another position versatile guy. Very active in the run game and strong for a defensive back. Good at initiating contact while tackling. He delivers a good pop at the point of attack, and he shows good tackling technique. Rarely gets shaken in the open field, similar to Josh Metellus. And he does a good job of pattern matching. And unlike Chris Miller, this guy is very good at the ball skills department. He had 7 interceptions and 27 passes defended, as opposed to Chris Miller, who had 0 interceptions and just 6 passes defended. Clemens attacks the ball with vigor and charges downfield aggressively. He had several very physical hits on ball carriers in the tape that I looked at. The negatives, though, he's not a great athlete. He didn't test well at the combine. He had the second worst 40-yard dash time, the second worst vertical, and the third worst broad jump. He was third in the bench press among cornerbacks, but overall, besides that, he was not very good as far as his testing goes. His change of direction is a problem. Agility overall is not good. His closing burst is average. His long speed is poor. And on top of his slow play, he's also slow to diagnose plays. He's usually a step slow on reading play action or double moves or draws, and his pursuit angles are inconsistent. So you're having a constant issue here with him not being able to get to plays, but also that's being compounded because he's slow to get to the play. Not just slow to get to the play, but he's slow to recognize the play too. So that's a doubly bad issue there. He plays physical, but also had a few dangerous tackling attempts where he led with the crown of his helmet that I saw. That could get you in trouble. You need to be careful and smarter about the way you're tackling. As I mentioned with his issues in diagnosing plays, his football IQ just isn't quite there right now. He didn't pick up football until he was in high school because his head coach, or his future head coach at football in high school, had to convince him to not leave the basketball team but pick up football as well as playing basketball because he was a basketball player mostly, at least early in high school. So even though he hasn't grown a ton, there's still room for him to grow even though he played a ton in college. He also struggled to close off coverage on the outside as well. So overall, Rodney Clemens actually almost didn't play football growing up. It took some strong convincing from his high school coach to get him to even try out for the football team. But now Clemens is on the cusp of realizing a career in the NFL after being a starter and team captain for the SMU Mustangs. Clemens is not very athletic at the safety position, but he's still learning how to play the game. That being said, Clemens offers good ball skills, consistent ability as a safety and run support, and position flexibility that could give him a future as a slot corner or nickel linebacker if he is not a safety. While there are issues here, there's still a chance he could become a nice depth piece. I think he's a nice project player that can play on special teams right away. He's a mid to late day 3 selection right now. I wouldn't mind taking a guy like him in the 6th round just because there is still room for him to grow. And, it never hurts to get a special teams contributor late in the draft like that. The only game I could see was his game against Temple this past season. So that was Rodney Clemens from SMU, not LSU, SMU. And you have one more player to look at, Cameron Curl, correct?
Yeah, from Arkansas. He's 6'1" and 206 pounds. He came on with the Razorbacks first as an injury replacement cornerback as a freshman, getting 46 tackles and 8 pass breakups on the year. As a sophomore, he played and started in 11 of 12 games as a strong safety, only missing the season finale because he was suspended for being seen socializing with Mississippi State's dance team before their game against the Bulldogs. Still, he was able to get 53 tackles and 5 pass breakups on the year. Then, in his junior year, he was able to get 76 tackles, 4 for a loss, 2 sacks, 2 pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles, which one was returned for a touchdown, and led Arkansas with 2 interceptions. Curl decided to forego his senior season and declare for the draft early. And so starting with what's good about him, He was a 3-year starter coming off his best season, and in his first season with the Razorbacks, he played quarterback, which allowed him to develop a pretty smooth and even back pedal for a safety. And this also opens the opportunity that he could possibly play corner in an emergency situation. Despite starting as a corner, his tackling was actually pretty solid, both at the line and in space, and even one-on-one, he had a few pretty good tackles, showing some solid block shedding abilities in the process. This is because he's really strong, actually timed for the best bench press of all safeties at this combine at 24. Now, in terms of his coverage, he showed some pretty good play recognition overall, but especially when covering from the slot, but also when reading combination routes as well. Then, when the ball is in the air, he's shown the consistent ability to see where he's going and adjust his coverage accordingly. Lastly, he showed he runs the alley with adequate pursuit leverage and takes decent pursuit angles to the ball. On the flip side of things, his speed was my big concern. It kept him from being in position a lot in college. He would recognize what was happening and even take a good angle, but the speed wasn't enough to get there. This has and will continue to limit who he can cover in the slot. Then, even though he isn't fast, his momentum carries him away from plays at time, causing him to struggle to change direction in the open field. There was one play against Ole Miss where this was put on full display perfectly as he ran from the other side of the field and ended up falling on his back after overrunning the tackle and trying to cut backwards. Continuing with speed, he has below average burst to be able to get in passing lanes and doesn't have a second gear to be able to recover after a play opens up. Going back to the change of direction stuff, it can be tough for him as he plays with tight hips and also makes it hard on him when he's going against double moves. In fact, on the opening play of the Alabama game in 2018, you see him get beat bad by a double move. But Tua found someone else first, and he actually didn't get picked on. There was just someone else that he decided was better. But, I mean, Tua had his options. Then I found his effort to be very up and down. I felt like he wasn't involved as my other safety prospects, and some of it was speed, but the effort was consistent from play to play. Wasn't consistent from play to play. Last thing isn't necessarily a negative on him, but he followed his tasks strictly, not really relying on his own instincts at times. So if the play wasn't designed for him to do something, he wasn't doing it. That kind of might be part of the effort thing. Might be he takes things too literally. I don't know. It was weird, but anyhow, I personally think Curl should have gone back and played one more year before declaring. He was just getting a little better every year. I think one more year starting experience, he could have again been better. I don't blame him, though. Arkansas is a mess, and they've been bad for a while now. And I've got the vibe he didn't like it there and might have not had the best relationship with the coaches. I felt like the coaches there may have chained him up a bit and didn't let him use his instincts like he should have been able to, which is why I didn't necessarily count that as a negative for him. He may have just been following what the coaches said, and, I mean, he did get suspended there. So I have a feeling that he didn't really get along with the Arkansas people. Anyhow, I think Curl is going to be a 7th rounder. He could have used another year of development, but I think he still could be drafted. That being said, I totally could see him being an undrafted free agent too, but I'm leaning towards him being a back-end 7th-round pick just because of his strength, because he was the strongest safety in this draft, and he did show a little bit of promise. So I watched his highlights. I watched him versus Ole Miss in 2019, which is where he returned the fumble for a touchdown, and then versus Alabama in 2018. So would you like to go ahead and rank your prospects?
Yeah, so like I said at the beginning of the show, I wasn't big on most of these guys. There's some things I liked about them, but overall I didn't love what I saw, but I also wasn't looking at a lot of high-caliber guys. I was looking at mostly day 3 guys. So at the top, I have Rodney Clemens, only because he's only going to cost you like a 7th-round pick or undrafted free agent signing. He's a good locker room guy. He offers position flexibility, special teams ability, and he could possibly get even better. He could be a sneaky good find late in the process that has the potential to bloom into a rotational piece on defense. That's not bad. I think that's a good late-round pick, possibly. Second, I have Josh Metellus. Excuse me. He's more of a safer selection, but it's going to cost like a 5th-round pick. He's more of like a box safety kind of guy. A little limited as far as an athlete goes. Not a bad day 3 pick, but he's not going to move the needle in the safety room right away. But he will add another piece, so I guess that's good to see. But if you're looking to add another important player, someone that can play legitimate snaps, Metellus probably is not quite there. But he's not a bad pick. Third, I have Chris Miller. I just don't know where to put him, man. Like I said, he reminds me of Devin Duvernay, and I'll also throw out another comparison as far as Texas Longhorn safety P.J. Locke is concerned. He's kind of unhinged, just flying around hitting people. Smaller slot corner is kind of what he projects to, but he plays free safety and he plays free safety and he plays like a linebacker. He's not bad as an undrafted free agent, but again, I don't know where to put him right now. There's just a lot of moving parts here, but I'm sure you can find a way to get him involved somehow. But that's why I have him third. And then last I have L'Jarius Sneed. And that's not because he was bad. It's just that he was better as a cornerback than a safety. And if I'm drafting L'Jarius Sneed, I'm going to put him at cornerback where he's going to produce the most. Now, I'm not going to jam him in at safety. So for that being the case, and a ranking among safeties, I'm going to rank the guy who's a better cornerback than a safety last. So no offense to him, but he's last because of that. So that being the case, you have 6 guys, including Ashton Davis, who you looked at yesterday. Talk to me about those 6 guys in conclusion.
So I'm going to start from the bottom up. Last, I have Jeremy Chin. He fits exactly what the Steelers love from a defensive back, and that's exactly what I hate. And with their track record of drafting defensive backs, I kind of think that's pretty fair. He has a very high ceiling, I will give him that, but I absolutely hate drafting athletic freaks and hoping they develop. It's usually not a good idea unless the value is there, and for likely a third-round pick, I am not about it. Steelers have to be smart with their picks this year and maximize value, and he isn't it. I do have Ashton Davis. I like his speed, and his tackling was a little bit better than Delpit's. However, I just didn't trust where his instincts are right now. And if he's there for the Steelers in the 3rd round, that's fine. But I can't justify using pick 49 on him with where he's at. Definitely an option if the Steelers trade back, though. I wouldn't be as mad if Steelers ended up moving back to like pick 60 and taking Ashton Davis, where they netted some more picks from it. It's just where they're at, the value isn't there. Following Davis, I have Grant Delpit. I like his coverage abilities, but he can't tackle. I have a funny feeling, though, he'll fall into the 3rd round. Probably not to the Steelers pick, but still. This makes me still like the pick, as a value there is pretty good for first-round coverage abilities. Working with NFL coaches, you may be able to work on his tackling, and that's what I would hope for to take him. But I was surprised. When I first looked at Grant Delpit, when I first heard about him, he was expected to be the first safety off the board going in the 1st round, being, I know, like the Jim Thorpe Award winner. But after watching this tape, I realized, like, yeah, and then it seems like everyone in the media started realizing, like, yeah, this guy isn't a good tackler. So I think he is going to fall into the 3rd round after being considered one of the best safeties in the nation. After Delpit, I have Cameron Curl. He's a low-risk kind of guy. As a 7th rounder, I would not be opposed to bringing him in for depth, even if he's a bit slower. He has some strength to work with, and so for the low-risk price, I'd take it, and he could end up as an undrafted free agent, and even more, that's even better, to be honest. I would have no problem bringing in Cameron Curl just to try and develop him. Now, the second best guy is Brandon Jones. Brandon Jones and Antoine Winfield aren't too far apart. Jones has a lot of the same qualities and may have been able to run just as fast as Winfield at the combine, but I just like Winfield a little bit better. Jones definitely has some value, though, likely going somewhere between rounds 3 and 4. And that leaves Winfield for the top. His tape was awesome. He's a little guy, but I really liked how he carried himself, and this could easily be the 2nd-round pick right here if he lasts. And then he's, at the moment, not expected to last till there. But, I mean, he checks a lot of boxes. I mean, with the NFL connection, with the tape jockey, I mean, he plays tough. He's got a high motor. I really enjoyed Antoine Winfield Jr.
Alrighty then. So those are the 9.5, if you will, players that we looked at regarding safeties. So now let's get into NFL news and notes. Some uniform changes going on around the NFL. Austin, which one do you want to get to first?
Probably the best one, or I guess debatably the best one, the Chargers.
Alrighty then. So the Los Angeles Chargers had an update. They are now reintroducing their powder blue uniforms with a little bit of a retro look. Instead of it just being an alternate with the powder blue, it's kind of more like a throwback, a modernized throwback with the old font and the powder blue jerseys. They're also including white and yellow pants for their jerseys, as well as obviously a white jersey. They'll have their color rush back, which is the kind of like navy, or I guess maybe that's more of a royal blue, all around. And then they have the navy blue alternate with just a yellow accent as well, kind of a callback to their late 70s to early 2000s look. So all in all, I really like what I saw here. I really like the addition of the yellow pants. I think that's something, I think that was there originally, but I think that all around it was a pretty good move.
Yeah, man, it looks dope. And I mean, for a team that's falling out of relevancy very quickly, I mean, they already don't have many fans in the stands. It was a good way to get people to say, it was good for them to have arguably the best jersey debut of the 4 teams that redid their jerseys.
Which was your...
5, sorry.
I think it's definitely the best. Which was your favorite and least favorite?
So favorite was the Chargers. My least favorite, I actually don't like the Buccaneers.
I meant the Chargers uniforms themselves.
Just within the Chargers?
Yeah.
So I like the powder blue with the yellow pants. I think that is just such a classic, nice look, and I kind of want a Chargers jersey just for that. I might get LaDainian Tomlinson in that version. I know that kind of doesn't make sense, but I don't really want a current Chargers player. But it's just a really nice jersey. What I don't like, I don't like their super blue one, like the navy blue with yellow. It's like, I think that's their color rush technically.
You're talking.
I'm not exactly sure.
You're talking like the royal blue or the dark navy.
Dark navy,
like the dark navy. The dark navy, so the royal blue with the yellow bolt, and not the yellow. The navy blue with the yellow outline is kind of a callback to their late 70s to early 2000s look, like when they first drafted Phillip Rivers. That's what they have there, and then the royal blue is like their color rush.
Okay, so the royal blue I do like. It's that dark one that has the outline of the bolt that I don't really like. I don't know. It's not as eye-popping and nice-looking as the other jerseys, in my opinion.
I guess it's just because I grew up looking at those that I like them a little more. I still have to agree with you, though. Either the color rush or the powder blue and yellow top and yellow bottom has to be my favorite. And then
I actually like the numbers on the helmet. I've seen a lot of people complaining about the numbers on the helmet. I actually like that. I think it's a nice addition.
That's actually a throwback because that's how it used to be.
I think that's dope.
I think it is cool too. So, let's see, what's next? Oh, the Patriots were the other team. That's right. They basically installed their color rush jersey, the navy with the red and yellow shoulder stripes, as their, red and white as their yellow. What's the yellow? Red and white shoulder stripes as their home jersey. And they basically adopted that as their road jersey, except they inversed the shoulder stripes with the white and the navy, and they made the jersey obviously white. So what do you think about that, changing things up for the first time in 20-plus years?
Shoulder stripes aren't it, man. I don't like that. It's what ruined both the Browns and Patriots jerseys for me. The shoulder stripes they look weird. I'm not a big fan of them. I know Patriots fans were disappointed. They wanted a throwback uniform, and they wanted the old helmets with the old logo on it. So I felt like going to the comments, I saw a lot of Patriots fans disappointed. I wasn't about it. I thought they were okay overall, but just ditch the stripes on the shoulder pads, man.
So you're talking about the ones with the old Patriot Pat mascot?
Yeah, they wanted Patriot Pat, man. The Patriots fans did.
So they do have the shoulder stripes on that one, but it's mostly red with a little white and blue. I like those, but I tell you what one doesn't get enough respect that I love is what they wore in the 90s. And maybe, yeah, it's because it's a 90s thing. It does look kind of silly now, but I was kind of hoping they'd go back to that just because I'm generally more of a fan of royal blue than I am of navy. I'm just not crazy about these. The shoulder stripes, like you mentioned, that's just, I remember on Madden back in the days when I was a kid and you'd create a jersey, you'd only have 4 options, and outside of the base jersey, this was the first option was the weird shoulder stripe, and it just cuts off halfway, and it looks really weird now, but at the time it was cool because I was like, wow, this is different. But now I'm old enough to realize that that's just kind of lazy.
Yeah, not a big fan. Shoulder stripes just don't look good on jerseys for whatever reason.
Well, they do for the Steelers, though.
Well, yeah, but that's different.
It is.
It's a little different there.
Hey, fair enough, man. Fair enough. What else? Oh, no, that's gonna be for later.
Brian Kilmeade.
Oh,
You know, a lot
oops,
of people
my
know
apologies.
you from Fox and Friends.
I know we kind of shot this down before. Oh, I did want to mention real quick that baseball has started to play in South Korea without fans, and they're all wearing masks, or at least the umpires are wearing masks. I thought that was interesting to make note of.
It's wild. I didn't actually know that. I didn't even hear that.
So good
It's a shame,
news.
though.
Good news for them at least. Maybe we'll someday get there. Eventually. Maybe. I hope.
Lamar Jackson's the cover athlete for Madden.
Oh, yeah,
Excellent.
that's right. I'm still not going to buy it. Not that I was going to get it anyways. Madden's awful.
I mean, and if anything, that makes me want it even less, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, Madden's trash. And, I mean, the whole curse thing was nonsense anyways, and if anything, it was disproved this year because Patrick Mahomes won the Super Bowl and won the MVP. And then the year before that, or wait a minute, who was on the cover for 19? Antonio Brown. Okay,
Antonio Brown.
I was thinking.
That one just took a little while to hit. It took till after the season.
I was actually thinking about the year before with Tom Brady because of the whole Super Bowl thing, but 2 of the last 3 years it hasn't really applied. So, whatever. In any case, what else? Oh yeah, I know we kind of go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you wanted to talk about the 18 and 17 Madden cover athletes, what just happened with them?
Yeah, I was gonna say that was gonna be the big thing I was gonna get to next. So Rob Gronkowski has come out of retirement, and the Patriots traded him to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because he wanted to play with Tom Brady. So now he's in Tampa, and oh boy, now with nothing else to talk about, get ready for a lot of this over the airwaves for the next few days.
Yes, sir. Just only for a few though, because then the draft starts, so that's good.
Thank
but
God.
yeah, the Patriots got some decent value for a guy that retired. They got a 4th for Gronk and a 7th, so that's pretty decent. I mean, there's a pretty high 4th too, and so I think they did good. I mean, a lot of people are saying they got messed up in that trade. It sucks for them, but I mean, yeah, it sucks for them. But Gronk was never going to play for them. Their choice was be petty and not do anything and just let him not play, or get some compensation for it and let everyone else be screwed along with them. So they chose option 2, where they at least get draft compensation for it.
And how long is Gronkowski really going to play?
I mean, he's only on a 1-year deal, so I guess we'll have to see. I mean, he retired and he said he wasn't going to come out of retirement, so
Trading a guy that was
who the heck knows?
trading a guy that was retired for anything, I think, is a good idea.
Exactly, dude. He obviously didn't want to play for your team. Now, next up, Tom Brady's going to trade for. Tom Brady's going to have the Bucks trade for Calvin Johnson's rights.
Oh, we should trade him Ramon Foster.
I'm ready. They could take his rights.
We'll get a 7th round pick for it.
That'd be dope.
I could get sticky with that. So, speaking of trades, I know we kind of shot this down, but Leonard Fournette is available for trade. Why is this not going to happen?
He is a running back, first. He is not a very good running back. Second, he has missed one more game than Connor in his career. Third, he's a $4 million running back. Fifth, then he has 1 year left on his deal. 6, the Steelers don't need a running back. 7. Is that good enough? Was one of those 7 good? The combination of all 7 good?
But
actually 8. Steelers don't have that much draft capital this year. 8.
But Austin, I want a running back, and I want to draft one too. And
It's okay. We'll trade our 6 for Fournette, and then every round we'll just take a running back. Round 2, it's going to be Jonathan Taylor. Round 3, Akers. Round 4, there's 2 guys we're going to have to take. I don't know who's going to be there in round 4, but, I mean, we'll figure it out. Then round 6, James Robinson. Round 7, I don't know a 7th round running back, so we'll figure it out when we get there.
did you mention that he's been suspended before?
Oh, Fournette? No, I didn't even mention that either.
Reason number 9, he's been suspended. So
Yeah, dude.
in any
Doesn't make
case,
sense.
look, I mean, he's a nice player, but I unless if he's a free agent coming for practically the veteran minimum, I just think it's not going to happen. The only nice part about adding him would be that it basically ensures you're not going to draft one.
Yeah, but it's essentially like you drafted one when you're like this close to the draft and you give up a pick. It's like it feels like you drafted one.
Well, what I meant is like the only way you could theoretically do it would be to sign him for the veteran minimum, and he's not a free agent. So I have a feeling the Jaguars are either going to trade him for a late pick or they just might straight up cut him.
There's a chance. I mean, they have the draft capital. I heard right now his value is super low. Like, teams aren't offering more than a 6th-round pick for him, and that seems to be the going value. Some team will take him for that. They're willing to move on, and I mean, that's pretty bad because the Jaguars already have like 12 picks in this draft. I think they have the most picks actually of any team in this draft. So, I mean, it's kind of wild, and they're really blowing stuff up. They cut their wide receiver Marquise Lee just the other day, and so like they're blowing up their entire team for the most part and bringing in a bunch of new guys.
Don't forget that he was the number 4 pick in that draft.
Yeah, dude, he's number 4.
But running back should be a 1st-round pick.
Never draft a running back in the 1st round. It doesn't matter. Even if they are a top-tier talent, it's not going to pay off. A running back is never going to elevate your team. It's just how it works.
That's just the way it is these days in the NFL.
The good running backs in history, and then look at their team. There's going to be a few that line up with a team that won a Super Bowl. There's going to be, but like the best ones, like Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders did absolutely nothing with the Lions, and he was amazing. He was one of the best running backs in history, and they just. I mean, the Lions were a little incompetent back then.
I think that's a little bit different just because football was so different back then. I think now you can make that argument, but better running backs back then had more of an impact. I think that's more of a Lions thing.
Yeah, I said there were a little bit of a bad management, but it's really a lot of bad management. But it still goes to show you, in a time where running backs were more important and you have one of the best in history, you weren't able to really do anything with it. I think it almost helps my argument there.
You give me a Barry Sanders, I'll raise you a Dan Marino.
A fair point.
I'm just saying, like, absolutely right now. But back when teams were running the ball 70% of the time, I'd say that having a good running back was pretty darn important. Not that it's not important. It's as we've said all along, pretty much since the whole Le'Veon Bell thing, back, a couple of years now, it's just, it's hard to justify paying these guys long term. It's hard to justify putting heavy capital into them because you're feeling obligated to give them the ball X amount of times when really that's not necessarily the best thing to do.
And that money should go straight. Any money you want to use on a running back should go straight to the offensive line, because the offensive line is going to help you way more in your run department, as well as contribute as pass blockers, than they would than a running back would help you. And I know it's not saving you that much money to not pay a running back, but I mean,
it adds up.
Any little bit helps.
It adds up. So, let's see. I guess all that's left now, because we have one more position, offensive line, to talk about. We'll be doing that relatively soon, in a couple hours here, but let's just have a conversation about the draft now. So the Steelers are going to be without a first-round pick for the first time since, I think, 1967. They only have 6 picks in total. We know the needs. Let's talk about not just the Steelers, but I guess the draft in general. There's a few things to consider. Number one is that I guess the first thing is the Bengals. They've got probably the easiest thing to do. They just take Joe Burrow. Or, wait, do they screw this up and do they listen to offers from Miami, who considers trying to move up possibly?
I mean, honestly, if I'm the Bengals, I would super entertain it. In fact, I actually would agree with that. If they were able to secure the Dolphins' first-round picks, all 3 of them, by giving up that first-round pick, I would do it and try and be a player for Trevor Lawrence next year instead. I mean, it's just...
That's tough. That is tough. For the Dolphins. Or you're talking about the Bengals, I'm sorry. I was just thinking, like... So you're suggesting the Bengals get a bunch of picks and than try to sort of tank for Trevor?
You know what I would say? You know what? Because the Dolphins would never give up 3 first-round picks. I should say never, but you know what I would do to try and get myself a really high chance of getting the quarterback I want next year? Instead of taking the Dolphins 5, I take the Dolphins 18 and the second one they have. I forget where that one actually is. And then I say, I want your 2021 first-round pick. And then take, like, some late-round picks in 2020. Like, take, like, a 7th from them as well. Just a bit of the deal. But then, so now you still have 2 first-round picks this year. You have another one next year, an extra one, and you have a high chance of getting the quarterback you want while also being able to get some core guys for the quarterback that you want next year. So that's what I do, because I would still expect the Dolphins to be bad this year, and I still expect the Bengals to be bad this year, especially if they trade that far back, but I think it would set them up. I would probably, if I were the Bengals, I would try and get a trade like that where I get the 2 back-end first, maybe like a 6th or 7th round pick this year, and then the Dolphins first next year.
So if you're the Bengals, if you're not taking Burrow, you're not taking a quarterback, period.
I'd skip it and start. I would literally just try to prepare for the next draft.
So then you'd roll with what?
Offensive lineman.
So then you'd roll with what? Maybe Andy Dalton in 2020?
I guess so. I mean, he's still not off the roster as of right now, but I mean, there's a lot of.
What if he wins you more
players.
games? What if he wins you more games? What if he wins you 5 games and all of a sudden you have the 5th pick?
Oof, that might be bad. Yeah.
See, that's the thing. Because I heard it talked about where Miami, it was like from Miami's point of view, you have 3 options. 1, you stay where you are and you take Tua or another quarterback. You try to trade up to get Joe Burrow, or you stand pat and pick someone else, or move back and pick someone else. Roll with Fitzpatrick. And I'd like the idea of trading down to accumulate picks, try to go after Trevor Lawrence next year, because I personally think if Trevor Lawrence is what they say he is, he's going to be better than any quarterback in this class, and you can get him more weapons right now so that he's in better shape as soon as he walks in the door next season or after next season. But the point that was brought up is you have Ryan Fitzpatrick, who played one of the best years of his career last year. If you add a couple offensive linemen, a receiver, and all of a sudden you win, 7 games next year, all that work you got done to acquire a ton of picks over the past couple of years, you're going to have to use all of that and more just to get that guy you were hoping to get, which I hadn't really thought about it that way, but there's a chance you could almost jumpstart your rebuild too quickly.
There is a chance. I think the Dolphins still have a good amount of picks next year anyway, even if they wanted to trade up.
I think they have 9. I think they have 9 or 10, actually.
Because they have a lot of 2021 picks. They have they still have the Texans' first and second round pick in 2021, and the Texans are a crap hole right now. The Texans are shooting straight down in the so they might still have enough capital to be able to move up and get Trevor Lawrence, but and then if in one of the scenarios they could trade back, so it's 100%. I think they could draft around Fitzpatrick right now, still win 7 or 6 games, and still have enough to move up next year with how much they have, especially if they trade back this year and get something for next year. Because, having the Texans 2021 first and second is probably going to be valuable. I don't project the Texans as being a good team this year. I think that Deshaun Watson's going to be all alone to fend for his team but I think Watson's going to be fending for himself here.
All right, besides that, what about the conversation? Obviously, Burrow's number 1 as far as the quarterbacks go. Tua is in a free fall, and Justin Herbert's getting some more popularity. What do you think about those 2 guys? Because the Dolphins and Chargers seem like the 2 teams that are really gunning for a quarterback possibly, and just what do you think about those 2 guys and where they're going?
I say that one more time?
Herbert and Tua, where do you think they're kind of going right now? Because they seem to be heading in opposite directions.
I still have Tua going at pick 5, no matter pick 5 or before pick 5, no matter who's there. I think it still makes sense. I don't really know much about Herbert. I keep hearing that he's moving up draft boards, and it doesn't really mean much to me because I just don't know much about him.
He's a big toolsy. Think about the typical John Elway quarterback. Big, tall, strong, can throw the ball a mile. Probably not as accurate as either of the other two quarterbacks, and probably not considered as high overall as far as the grade goes. But he's the prototypical strong-arm quarterback that you're used to seeing.
Like Drew Lock.
Huh?
Essentially. Drew Lock.
Drew Lock, yeah. Yeah, I'd say kind of like that, yeah.
Okay.
But bigger.
So, bigger. Got it.
Because isn't Drew Lock only 6'3"?
I don't remember.
Drew Lock is 6'4". Okay, never mind. They're pretty much the same. Just a couple inches. But, yeah. What else? So Chase Young. I wanted to get your... because this was another discussion point I've seen. What do you think about this narrative that you should never pass on a blue chip prospect? Now, before you give me an answer, I want you to think about it for a second, because football is unlike most of the other main sports, where in baseball you only have 9 players on the field. In basketball, you're one of 5 players on the court. In football, you're one of 11 players on the team, and you're only playing half the time. So is adding one blue chip prospect, this is again coming into my whole Miami trade scenario, if you will, is trading or playing, getting one blue chip prospect like a Chase Young more important than getting 3 quality, like decent starters or decent contributors that are like average? Because you think about, you have all these different positions to have. So would you rather have a guy like, I don't know. Would you rather have a guy like an Antoine Winfield, Ezra Cleveland, and I don't know, Jonathan Taylor, or that's a bad example because he's a running back. I don't know. How about a Michael Pittman or something like that? And that also might not be good. How about Van Jefferson or something, because he's not as highly ranked as Pittman. So how about you have those 3 guys versus a guy like Chase Young? What would you rather have? I'm kind of curious.
I like quantity over quality in these sort of cases. I feel like every year there's this blue chip guy, never going to fail, 100%, going to be the best player in the league has ever seen, and that's always a gamble. Sometimes it does work out. Sometimes these players come out really great, like Myles Garrett, in terms of play, has been really great coming out as a first-round pick and an edge rusher. Then there's the Jadeveon Clowneys of the world. Jadeveon Clowney was, he's the best prospect ever. He's going to be a great edge rusher.
And he's still good, but he's not what he was built up to be.
He's not an all-pro. He's not going to be a Hall of Famer at this rate anyway. He could change up his how he plays. Currently not on a team though, it's just, to me, usually it doesn't work out that way. Usually you should be drafting quality over quantity, but the way drafts work is quantity, you're usually going to find a gem in the rough. There's always like that gambling chance that, wow, there's going to be a perennial all-pro in the 6th round, just randomly sitting there. And I mean, we weren't even talking about 6th round. We're talking about Antoine Winfield, Ezra Cleveland, and Van Jefferson, which are like 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and even 1st-round picks. Ezra Cleveland's been talked about as someone that's going to be sneaking into the 1st round by the media. So, I mean, I'm more a fan of quantity over quality in draft scenarios, because you never know what you're going to get. It's life is like a box of chocolates, as according to Forrest Gump.
See, I thought that was interesting, because I feel like normally conventional wisdom would say you take the best player, right? But when
I think so. In most situations, you pick quality over quantity.
But when you think about the fact that you have so many different positions, like you think about having one bad offensive lineman can torpedo your entire offense.
Yeah, man. You almost need a pretty good offensive line throughout. You need at least like an okay guy at every position. Otherwise, it screws up your whole offense.
And that's the thing. You don't necessarily need a stud tackle. Like, it certainly helps, absolutely. But you could sort of get away with having no offense to Matt Filer, but you can get away with having a guy that's just, steps in and does his job. You could do just fine with 5 of those guys instead,
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I thought that was just kind of an interesting philosophical discussion, if you will. What else? I mean, we kind of already we've talked at length about the quarterbacks over the weeks here. It's just, it's just not going to happen. The Steelers aren't going to take one.
Want to have a fun theoretical discussion following that one?
I don't know, maybe not, but okay.
Let's say the Steelers didn't trade their first round pick this year. Who are they taking at 18? Hiring on.
That would have been nice to think about all this whole process. Probably.
Now,
I would say.
Now you're thinking safety. Now you're 100% thinking safety.
See,
you don't have Sean Davis or Minkah Fitzpatrick, and now you have no one playing next to Terrell Edmonds.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, because you have to remember if you're not trading that, you don't have you have basically one starting safety.
So I mean, you're probably thinking Xavier McKinney, probably. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Safety off the board. I didn't look at him. I don't know if the Steelers would even like him.
I haven't even heard that much about him, so I'm just gonna go with the straight meh right now.
But that was interesting to think about. I saw someone tweet that. Someone was saying, who do you think the Steelers would take had they not traded their first round pick?
Well, the other thing to consider is they probably would have gone out, maybe no Eric Ebron, but instead they sign a safety.
True, they might spend the money there instead, $6 million. I'd pay Sean Davis. I'd pay him like $5 million or $4 million.
Or they'd be stubborn. And that's the other thing, too, is Sean Davis probably could have come off of IR at the end of the year. Maybe he'd have played, too. Probably not well, but he probably would have played. And never discount the possibility of the Steelers being stubborn and just moving Mark Barron back to safety.
Yeah, it is true. That could have been something that happened. Mark Barron could have stayed on the roster because of it.
So, obviously, the quarterback discussion died because it's not going to happen. Let's move to running back real quick. We all know the names at the top. As I've said before, I'm not crazy about running back, and I think the guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, even though that there's a lot of connections there, I think the only guys really in play are Akers, Dobbins, and Jonathan Taylor, just because of the whole size thing. The Steelers are very specific about that. And I'd rather not see a running back, but if you're going to take one at 49, and then just don't take one at all.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. You're wasting a pick if you're taking one later in the draft. I mean, in my opinion, my humble opinion, I think you're wasting a pick picking a running back anywhere in this draft. But, I mean, you're only going to see a significant play or, like, contribution from an early pick. And that's how it's going to be because you have Benny Snell, you have James Conner, you have Jalen Samuels, you have Kareth White. You have to get another one. You have to get a 1B guy for James Conner's like 1A to be able to usurp like Benny Snell. And even then, he's probably going to start as running back 3 behind Benny Snell. It's just how it's going to be.
And that's exactly the point. The only argument you can really make about running back is not that you need another guy, is that you need another guy. You need another guy who's the guy. And that's basically, like we said, it's either Taylor, Dobbins, or DeAndre Swift. I doubt Swift will be there. But the point is that you're already taking a risk drafting guys these highs anyway. So I just figure no. This is one of the deepest receiver classes I've ever seen, frankly. And I'd be happy with a lot of these guys. But the guy I personally love the most is Michael Pittman Jr. because of where he'll be available. And I think that there's a good chance that he or someone like Denzel Mims will be there. And if someone like Laviska Shenault drops, I would certainly not hate that either.
And the mock drafts I did today, which I won't really spoil who I took, but when I traded back in the second round to 55, both Pittman and Shenault were still there at pick 55. So, I mean, no mock drafts are just mock drafts, but I mean, they might be available. You're never going to know. But there's a lot of interesting options at wide receiver throughout this entire draft. I see guys that are going to be undrafted free agents that I liked a lot, like Freddie Swain was my favorite wide receiver, and he is considered to be undrafted free agent. Part of it is because I saw value in him going so late in the draft, but regardless, there's a lot of good wide receivers in this draft. You could really take one anywhere, and you might end up with a pretty good one. Only one I wouldn't be happy with is Jalen Reagor, but, you know.
Yeah,
It is what it is.
This would have been a bad year to declare if you're a later round guy. Like Tristan Jackson from Syracuse, a guy that I looked at. According to CBS, he's the 289th ranked prospect. This might have been a good year to stay in school one additional year.
Yeah, because it might have upped your draft stock just that much more if you were a junior.
This is another thing to wonder too. Say you have 2 first-round picks, and you're a team like the Jaguars. That they just released Marquise Lee, and they need help on offense. Do you consider passing up on your first pick? Say, I think it's number 5. I think. Say your first pick. Do you consider taking that receiver first? Do you start that receiver run, or do you try to go another position that might not have a player that's as good? Just because it's not as deep. Conventional wisdom would say you take the best player available, and that if you got a guy that you want, you take him. But at the same time, maybe there's only, I know that it's a deeper tackle class at the top, but let's say for the instance of this argument, there's only like 3 first-round tackle guys, and your next pick is until 18.
If I'm the Jaguars personally, I would not take the wide receiver. I would take the position that of need elsewhere. But that's personally because I like DJ Chark, and they actually have him as a wide receiver, so I'm cool with him. And then taking a wide receiver later in the draft because there's just so much value later in this draft. So I'd personally take, if I was the Jaguars, take something else. But let's say like the 49ers, the 49ers need a wide receiver. The 49ers have no wide receivers, in my opinion. So I think that they're a team that should be taking one early. And if they were there, they should 100% start it off taking a wide receiver.
I'd cheat and trade down. But no, for real. I'd probably do the same thing, even though it's I guess conventional wisdom would say you take that receiver because I guess guys like CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy are sure things as you can be, I guess. But I don't know. That's why
What's wild?
What?
Both mock drafts I did today, Jeudy fell past 20. He went to the Patriots in one of my drafts at 27. I was like, what is this?
Maybe that's the whole idea, that mentality is that I think because there are so many guys with a round 3 grade or higher, so many NFL-ready guys, that you see teams push it till later because it's like, hey, there's going to be a guy available, and all of a sudden the guy with the 3rd-round grade is going to be available in the 6th. You know what I mean? Which is why you're going to find crazy value in guys like Freddie Swain who are undrafted, who other years would probably be, day 3, day 2 picks.
Yeah, man, it's wild this year.
The opposite can be said of the tight end class, which we looked at earlier. I just don't see a whole lot. Cole Kmet looks like a guy that could be solid, but he's an atrocious blocker right now. Troutman, pretty much the same thing. He's got a bigger jump. Not a whole lot going on here. I like a couple of guys like Charlie Warner late, but there's not really a whole lot going on here.
Yeah, tight end is I mean, taking a tight end this year, even if it's late, is kind of like a sack in the face. We shouldn't have drafted Gentry last year.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
I mean, they shouldn't have. I remember how you felt. You felt that he was better suited as an undrafted free agent, and then he was taken in the 5th round. And I mean, it is what it is now, but taking a tight end 3 to replace Gentry this year just feels like a slap in the face. So you're not going to get a guy that's going to replace Eric Ebron and Vance McDonald. They're 1A and 1B basically. So now if you draft tight end, you're basically saying, Gentry sucks after 1 year, and we are going to try something else at tight end 3, and that's kind of like a waste, Yeah,
absolutely. As much as I love Charlie Warner, I'm just not expecting the Steelers to draft the tight end here. Rest assured, the future of this position is not going to be drafted this year.
And not this year. Maybe next year.
A few interesting options at edge. I'm skipping linemen for now. I mean, I guess we could talk tackles, but the tackle class really drops off after that first 5 or 6 guys.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. It was you have the top guys, and then it's just done. It's just after the beginning of the 2nd round, you're going to see all of the tackles. You might not see a tackle taken again until round 4. Just not very good.
I'm trying to think if there's another type of Chukwuma Okorafor pick somewhere in this draft, and I'm not sure who it would be.
Not that I know of.
Let's head to the other side real quick. Edge rushers. We looked at Did you look at Bradley and I, or were you thinking about it?
Neither.
No. Oh, it was Darrell Taylor was the guy you looked at. I've seen him mocked to Pittsburgh. I'd kind of like that.
Yeah, I would like it. It's just he has a suspension history, so it's unlikely.
Gotcha. A couple guys that are in
suspension. I'm sorry, he had character flaws. He kicked a teammate in the mouth.
Oof. Yeah, that's right. A couple guys that are interesting: Josh Uche, Zach Bond, two guys that can play on the edge and off the ball. I wonder if the Steelers will value that more.
What Zach Bond gives me vibes of? He reminds me of how I looked at Darius Leonard. I wasn't a fan of Leonard because I looked at him as an outside linebacker, and then Leonard came on strong as an inside linebacker, as an All-Pro. That's what I think could happen with Zach Bond. I didn't like Zach Bond as a edge rusher too much. I thought he wasn't really fit for it. He wasn't really big enough for it. But, I mean, some teams are talking about that they might move him inside to be what Darius Leonard was and be like that kind of linebacker. And he could be great because of it. But that's how I view it. I don't see him as an edge rusher right now. Just not for his value.
I think that's where teams that's kind of where some of the linebacker position is changing. It's more positionless now. That tweener type of edge rusher is kind of becoming like a pass rushing inside linebacker now.
Yeah, man. And that's what could happen with him, with Bond.
On the interior...
I've seen a lot of talk about... Oh, sorry.
No, go right ahead.
I've seen a lot of talk about Anfernee Jennings from Alabama. I keep seeing him mocked to the Steelers. People like him a lot.
Gotcha. Interior defensive line, there's 4 names that I've seen with the Steelers, at least early on. That's Justin Matabuke, Neville Gallimore, your guy Ross Blacklock, and my guy Rashard Lawrence.
Actually, all 3 of those guys you looked at the beginning were my guys. I looked at Gallimore last night, and I looked at Matabuke on our defensive line episode. And then, what was the other one? Wait.
Rashard Lawrence was the guy I looked at.
Oh, no, yeah, Rashard Lawrence was your guy, my bad.
Quick thoughts on the 3 players you looked at?
A lot of good defensive tackles in this class. I liked a lot of them. As you know, I looked at Gallimore yesterday, and he overtook Justin Matabuke as my favorite. I didn't think that was going to happen, but Gallimore has a lot of potential. I mean, I know, just to tell you what I talked about yesterday, Gallimore faced double teams on every single snap he had. Every single snap. And then the game against LSU, I showed you it once, but he was getting triple teamed. It was ridiculous. It was more than one occasion. He was getting triple teamed. I don't really know what the idea was, but what's it called? Oklahoma was sending a 3-man pass rush at LSU, and it was not working. And if you remember that game that Oklahoma got blown out, and it was 42-10 by the first half. But regardless, even though he's getting triple teamed, and even though Oklahoma is a mess on defense, he is the one bright spot, as he is still causing pressure on a 3-man pass rush when he is being triple teamed multiple times in that game. So Gallimore offers a lot. He just might not be there for the Steelers pick, but I fell in love with his tape, and I was like, wow, I see a high-motor guy that can really make damage at the NFL level. And just a little undersized as well, but still. And it overtook him because Matty Bouquet was good. He just wasn't that good. And but that's why Gallimore is likely going to be. I saw in the mock draft I did today, Gallimore actually went twice in the first round, so he might not be there for the Steelers pick. He is being talked about as a second rounder generally, though.
Could you, if the Steelers do go defense in the second round, do you think it's most likely to be interior defensive line?
Oh, 100%. Interior defensive line is the only place you don't have a starter. So I feel like if you're going to take a defensive player, you're going to be taking a nose tackle first.
As far as the linebackers go, we know that you're not super high on Troy Dye at all. And then there's Willie Gay Jr., who is interesting but has some character issues of his own. I wasn't crazy about the class of the guys we saw.
Oh, and something odd is I couldn't. When I was doing mock drafts today, I just all the inside linebackers that I wanted or were interested in were gone. Like, there's never a time where I was like, wow, I'm able to take an inside linebacker, which isn't the worst thing in the world. The Steelers don't necessarily need one, but it's just, this class is odd. It's just, there's not a lot of good guys in there that I would want. I could see the Steelers skipping inside linebacker completely, even though their depth isn't there. I think that with the way this class kind of looks, and with how they felt about Ulysses S. Gilbert before he got hurt, and Robert Spillane being a great special teams player when he came in, I think they might just skip inside linebacker in this draft.
I think they might skip cornerback too, but if they do take a guy late, or if they go the undrafted free agent route, I'd keep an eye out for Dane Jackson, the Pitt product, just because they are familiar with him.
I feel like that always happens. I feel like any undrafted guy out of Pitt always ends up with Steelers. Like Quadre Anderson 2 years ago, he was undrafted and they just brought him in, and I think he's back with the team.
Well,
right
yeah,
now.
he's back, and don't forget about guys like Scott Orndorff, obviously Darren Hall. Who's that guy? Crap, what's his name?
Dwayne Hendricks.
Well, I do.
Is currently with the
I
Steelers.
was going to say he was there as well, but there was another guy, the linebacker, Matt Galambos, as well. There's a ton of guys, especially this year with the lack of communication or in-person visits. Oh, one other thing to make note of: one of the few pro days the Steelers were able to attend was Clemson. So keep an eye out on Clemson prospects. I have a feeling that the Steelers might be more geared to look at guys like that, since they actually did get to meet with them this year.
Yeah, it's one of the few places that we're at. They were going to go to Michigan next, but they weren't able to.
But yeah, so be on the lookout for that. And then safety, we obviously talked a lot about them just a minute ago. Would you rather have, because obviously the Steelers need a number 3 safety, would you rather have a box safety run support guy, or would you rather have a deep safety guy that's not good at covering? So kind of like a Grant Delpit versus, I don't know. I didn't really look at any of, I guess kind of like a Josh Metellus.
Oh, the way I see it is I would prefer Brent Delpit, because I think Terrell Edmonds is big enough to play Mark Barron's role. He's a hybrid safety linebacker. I think he could be that. And if the Steelers draft a safety, it opens up the ability to do that. Now you have your rookie come in and play in the safety position. You move Edmonds over into the hybrid linebacker safety spot. I think that's what I'd want. So I'd want a more coverage guy for that area, because I think Edmonds is actually a pretty solid tackler, whereas Delpit would not be. So I think having them both on the field at the same time, I'd want a coverage guy, personally.
And then special teams, don't take a kicker or punter or a long snapper.
You should take a long snapper instead.
Yo, what is interesting? I saw this kind of proposed. How high, if you knew in a draft that you were getting I know this is kind of moot because you'd never know for sure, but say you could get Justin Tucker, who, by the way, is a fantastic opera singer. I don't know if you've ever heard his opera.
I haven't.
It is exquisite. But in any case, if you knew you could get Justin Tucker, how early would you take him?
If we're talking about this year's draft, or we're saying next year's draft, there's going to be Justin Tucker.
No, I'm just saying theoretically, you could pick Justin Tucker. You'll have him for 10 plus years, and he'll be as deadly accurate and powerful now as he has been his entire career for the next 10 plus years. How long would you take to take that player?
30.
You'd go that early. See,
First round.
I saw a panel of people discussing it, and they were all saying second or third round. And it's interesting because not only are you taking that pick so that you have it, you're also taking it so other teams don't have it, because it's such a crazy advantage to have basically 3 automatic points whenever you cross the 35-yard line.
Man, that's why I think end of the first round would be where I would do it. Pick 30. If the Steelers were able to choose where they take them in the draft, it's got to be 30, 31, 32 is where I would start thinking about it. Because, kicker is made fun of and undervalued. But, when you have a kicker like that, and you're, guaranteed in this scenario, you have future vision that you're going to hold on to him for 10 years, I think you have to pull the trigger at the late first round.
And on on top of that, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought, but I think that was kind of an interesting discussion point when you think about a guy that, kickers are made fun of, but no one's laughing when you need one.
Exactly. I mean, not having one is so damn. It's so damn frustrating not having a good kicker.
Oh, I remembered.
Hurts,
it also will make you more aggressive. Like you're more likely to go for it too, in certain situations, just because, it's even though it's a sure thing. Like you're not worried about it. Like you can afford to be more aggressive because you know you're going to get those points if you get in that position again. If you have another chance.
Man, I think kickers undervalued for how many points they score.
Final thoughts on the draft overall. I guess I know I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here, and I'm going to do this myself here kind of in the process, and there's still obviously one other podcast to do beforehand, but talk to me, who do you think, like maybe give me your 5 favorite prospects through this year and your 5 least favorite. If you want to start with one and then kick it to me so you can think about others, but do you want me to kind of start?
I can handle it. So, first of all, I love Antoine Winfield. From this episode, he is great. I liked how he played. I liked his demeanor. I liked how he held himself. I liked his NFL connections. There's a lot to like with him as a second-round pick. Then, following him, I'm not ranking these guys. I'm just like going as I think of them. I like Darrell Taylor. Darrell Taylor's the edge rusher from Tennessee. He's likely not going to be a Steelers because of his character issues, but I mean, I liked his value. He's a guy that I just saw a tweet yesterday that said that, oh, yeah, he's going to go higher than people expect. And I was like, oh, okay, so people are catching on. Because I like Taylor's tape. I thought his tape was great for what he was originally projected, which was like a 4th or 5th round pick. So I really liked him. Obviously, Freddie Swain. Freddie Swain is up there. He's likely to be an undrafted free agent. I just really fell in love with his tape. Same with Laviska Shenault. Shenault, another wide receiver I liked. He's a boomer bust player. And as I said, when I looked at him, I'm a gambling man. I like the idea that this could be the next DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, like, he is ridiculous. And number 5, because I listed 4, I'm going to keep a secret because we haven't talked about him yet. He's on the interior offensive line. But I have a 5th guy that is in my favorite 5. So I'll keep him for the next episode. But who were your 4 or 5?
I'm going to have to do a little thinking on this. It's tough because there were a lot of guys that I wasn't all that crazy about. But, I did really like Van Jefferson, obviously. He was a guy that I looked at receiver that I was really big on. I know he doesn't have the crazy big upside, but I did like what I saw, and I think he can come in and contribute right away. I also really like Charlie Warner, the tight end from Georgia. I know that I've kind of been big on him the whole time. He's not going to be a big-time player, but I think he's a sneaky good addition to a team later on. He can block, and he's a sneaky good receiver. Led the, I think it was NFLPA Bowl, he led the team in receiving in that game. And I also really like Michael Pittman. I watched him play a lot at USC this past season because I have a connection to the USC quarterback. And Pittman I got to see play a lot, and I really liked what I saw. I also really like Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin. He was an explosive player, and he's big and physical. There are some questions about his durability and his fumbling, obviously, which are concerning. But I still liked what I saw from him, and I have to pick one more. Who should I go with? See, I really liked all the receivers I looked at. There weren't a ton of guys that I loved otherwise. I'm trying to remember.
That was tough. That's why I picked 2 wide receivers when I was talking about it. I mean, I also only did 4, but I have the 5th guy in mind.
I did like Akeem Davis-Gaither from Appalachian State. We just talked about him. I also like Derek Tuska from North Dakota State, the edge rusher. And as time has gone on, I've warmed up a bit to Rashard Lawrence, the defensive lineman. And Ezra Cleveland, I also wasn't as high on him originally, but as time has gone on, I've been kind of bigger on him. And Cam Akers. So I guess I have a bunch of guys for number 5, but the top 4 are Van Jefferson, Charlie Warner, Michael Pittman, and Jonathan Taylor, Van Jefferson, Michael Pittman, and Charlie Warner are the top 4, and then I have a 5th guy somewhere in there. I'm just not sure who it is just yet.
Man. And do you know who were your least hated or your most hated? I'm sorry, which one guys you didn't like? Because I immediately think of number 1 when I think of.
I know who yours is too. I know who yours is too. Oh, you know what? With my 5th favorite, I'm gonna go with Jet the Printer Toner, just because that's my dude. I actually forgot about that Jet Toner, my dude. He's probably not gonna get drafted, but a guy that I didn't like. Oh, Malcolm Roach from Texas. Obviously,
you just said he was bad.
Obviously, nothing personal. You want to talk about boring tape, and it wasn't even boring, and though he was just kind of just doing his job. I mean, I guess he was kind of, but he was just so. You want to talk about nothing popping? Nothing popped on his tape. It was hard to watch. Who else? I think it was Colton McKivitz from West Virginia. I wasn't crazy about his tape. Jacob Breland. Not Jacob Breland. Bryson Hopkins. I wasn't crazy about him. Devin Duvernay. I didn't hate him. I felt like he was a running back and a running back playing receiver. It was kind of strange. Brian Lewerke wasn't all that good either. So yeah, those are just a handful of guys. But the top guy I'd say has to be Malcolm Roach. Or worst, I should say.
I made it obvious, man. I made it obvious. Oh, it was my least favorite. It's got to be Troy Dye. I have really hated his tape. That was a really rough time getting through that tape. It just wasn't good, and I think he's overvalued so much. Then going back to our second or third episode, I think it was third, is Lamar Jackson, man. Lamar Jackson was one of the weirdest prospects I looked at. I mean, his tackling is the worst tackling I've ever seen from any position. So it was so odd just watching him. I think him as one of the worst. Then after Troy Dye and Lamar Jackson, I didn't like Colby Parkinson. I thought he was overrated. I didn't like what he offered at the tight end position. I did not like Jalen Reagor. I think Jalen Reagor is overvalued. And then after that, I don't really know who would have been next. It's again no particular order. I'm just trying to think of a top 5. Oh, no, wait. There was another guy that was... Oh. I mean, this isn't fair because I don't really hate him. I just didn't like him as much as I wanted to. And that's Zach Moss. Zach Moss, I was so hyped getting ready because so many people wanted the Steelers to take him. But I don't think that's fair. I think I could find a better guy to fit into the bottom 5 for me. Because Zach Moss grew on me a little bit. I mean, I still wouldn't want to take a running back, but, I mean, still, Yeah.
So, for me, my top, I have Van Jefferson, Charlie Warner, Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, and I'm just going to go with Derek Tuska because I did like what I saw. And the 2 guys I really didn't like were Malcolm Roach and Colton McKivitz, and there's a third guy I'm trying to remember who. I remember... I didn't like Chris Miller from Baylor, the guy I was just talking about today, just because he's such a loose cannon, and again, kind of like Devin Duvernay, where he's just kind of he doesn't have a good fit, except he's not nearly as talented. In any case, there's no T.J. Hawkinson here for me, so that makes me sad.
That is sad. Tight end's undervalued.
One guy who's kind of interesting, I was bullish on him to start. I'm not as crazy about him now, but I need to go look at him again as Justin Jefferson because I get the feeling that he's very popular, but I'm just confused because he seems like he's only a slot guy to me, and he almost never faced press coverage in college, so that raises question marks for me.
And still, people have him sneaking into the first round now.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyhow, we still have an episode to go, and with that being the case, anything before we wrap up, Austin?
Oh, I think we're good.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, as always, if you have any questions about the show, please feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com, and you can see our episodes posted on SoundCloud and YouTube under the name Stronger Than Steel Podcast. Austin, have a great night, and everyone, hope you're enjoying the pre-draft process. We're finally here. Continue to stay safe, wash your hands, practice social distancing, and have a terrific night.
Good night.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.